My name's Derek Thompson. I'm the District Conservationist for NRCS in DeKalb County, Auburn, Indiana. Everybody familiar with where that is? Auburn? Okay, the reason that's significant is I'm in the Western Lake Erie Basin. And I don't know if any of you know of some of the water quality issues in Lake Erie, but that is significant for my county. 90% of DeKalb County drains to Lake Erie. The other 10% comes your direction up to Lake Michigan. So we have a lot of eyes looking at what we're doing. It's a blessing and a curse both. But anyways, just give you a little background about what's going on in Auburn with NRCS. I've been with NRCS for coming up on 15 years here in June as a district conservationist. The whole time I worked for Soil and Water District in DeKalb for 3 years prior to that. I actively farmed with my dad. We farmed about 1,000 acres, and up until 2022, we milked about 50 cows. So when Charles, my dad, decided he was done with milking, Derek was done with milking. I can tell you that. So a government job pays a little better than milking cows. So diving in, this presentation will be a little different than the one I did at the Watershed Foundation per Mark's request. This will be mostly focused on crop roots and drainage with the tile camera equipment that I have available. The one I did at the Watershed Foundation, we kind of mixed in some soil health stuff with it too, which I'm open to that if we have time at the end, if anybody has questions about soil health practices. So I have currently 3 sites that I go to on a quarterly basis with our tile camera to inspect the tile. The farmers are generous enough to have provided me access points to get to the tile. I do not dictate what they do practice-wise. I let them do their thing because in all reality, I want it to be real time. And how this all started is in 2016, I had a number of producers reporting concerns about cover crop roots in tile. They thought they had some plugs from cover crop roots. So fast forward to 2020, we got a brand new tile camera system. Very, very high dollar system. And one of the pieces of equipment with it is a crawler where we're crawling the tile. And everybody see the light at the end of the tunnel there? Everybody can see that? Anybody have any idea what that is? Any guesses? You'll find out in a minute. We didn't know either because there's no riser on this tile. We're going in and outletted a ditch. It's a 10-inch main outletting into an open drainage ditch. First time out with a crawler. I'm not joking. This is the first time. We just took delivery earlier in September, and you're about to see what the light at the end of the tunnel was. A furry friend that was alive in there, and thankfully not very aggressive. As you can see, we immediately started to abort and back up. So my crawler, it has a control cable that's attached to it. If he chews that in two, there it sits. There's no way to get it out of there. So after that, I bought a ball of round bale twine and I tie it to it so I at least have a backup to drag it out. We do have the ability to locate where the camera head is. We have a locator like the 811 guys. But again, if the cable's in two, that doesn't do any good because it doesn't send any signal out without the cable. So, but anyways, not what you want to see and not something I wanted to have to explain to my boss of why I just lost a brand new thousands and thousands of dollar crawler in a tile. So again, we started on this with concerns about cover crop roots. That seemed to be, for some of my producers, some feet dragging to adopting cover crops. In some respects, I think it was an excuse. But anyways, that's how we got started on this. NRCS had a very crude tile camera available statewide. And we started doing some research with it. It was okay, and you'll see here in later videos. But we were able, because of Lake Erie, we got some additional funds to purchase some equipment for the watershed, and this tile camera system was one of those purchases in 2020. Okay, we're going to start out here with a little pop quiz. Anybody drive a Chevy Duramax diesel here today? Show of hands, anybody? Anybody drive a diesel pickup, period, here today? Oh man, you guys are killing me. My wife will tell you, I don't have many vices. I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't even drink coffee. But I do have a sweet tooth for diesel pickups. Okay, I've got too many as it already is, but anyways, I've got 4 pictures up here of roots in tile. And the one on the top left, sir, what would you guess, what crop is that from? I can't pick on somebody with a diesel pickup, because usually I tell them, you know, pink slip here. If you get it right, you keep your truck. Get it wrong, I'm gonna take it. So you're safe on that.
Tree root.
Okay, got a tree root. Any other guesses? Top left. Blurt them out. Blurt them out. Blurt them out. Blurt them out. All right, no other guesses? That's corn. That is corn. Top left. Okay, let's move to the top right. Any other guesses? You in the LG jacket. Any guesses on what top right is? I'll make it easier. It's not trees. Nothing you're gonna see in my presentation is trees. Okay, we'll just get that out of the way right now.
Alfalfa.
Okay, we got an alfalfa. Good guess. That's soybeans. That's soybeans in a 4-inch top. Okay, bottom left.
Ryegrass.
Got a ryegrass. Good guess. Any other guesses? There's wheat. Wheat for harvest. Not a wheat cover crop. That is wheat for harvest. Not that it would probably make much difference. And then bottom right, that is cereal rye. Not annual ryegrass. Everybody comfortable with that? Because I have producers that use those terms interchangeably and they are totally different plants. Okay, that is cereal rye cover crop in the bottom right. So pretty surprising that you would see roots from all those different kinds of crops. And
Excuse me, is that 4 foot?
all of the tile I look at is at least 30 inches deep. At least 30 inches deep. I do not remember which of my sites those come from, but they're all at least 30 inches deep. They're either a 4-inch or a 5-inch tile of most of what you're gonna see. Obviously, the first one was a 10-inch main. And note on that, mains are always clean. We don't even look at them anymore. You will never see, well, I won't say never, but we don't get any good data from looking at mains. I can't explain that yet, but laterals are where the story's at.
Do you have any tile with annual ryegrass roots as a problem?
Good question. Not yet, and I'll kind of touch on that a little bit.
Want to repeat the question just to make sure.
Question was if I have seen any tile with annual ryegrass root problems. And so far, no. And we attempted to observe that, and I'll get into that here in a little bit, with one of our sites. So this is what I call site A. So when I do these presentations in my county, I'm very, very conscientious about not revealing where they are. Just to protect the producers. I've never had the discussion with them, but they were good enough to let me on their farm. This particular producer actually daylighted the tile at the edge of the field for me. So we're right along the edge of the fields where we go in, and it goes right into a 4-inch lateral. And this whole field is pattern tile. So we're just going into one of the laterals where they pattern tiled it. This system was installed in 2014. So now they're probably questioning some of your mind how long some of them been in. 2014 is the newest that we have, that we look at. So none of it is like, less than 10 years for sure. But we started here in April of 20. This is with our old camera. It did not have the ability to take pictures. It also, if you'll notice, it did not have the ability to put the water on the bottom. So I had to orient the video correct so that water's on the bottom instead of on the side. So it was okay, and it would only take videos every 2 minutes too. So as we got into it, it became apparent if we had the ability to get better equipment, it would be something we should pursue, which we were able to do later in 2020. So you get an idea, there's a few roots in there for wheat for harvest. Okay, this is following soybeans, no-till. This particular farm is on a pretty regular, I won't say it's always corn, bean, wheat, but wheat is rotated through it fairly often, and they Try to do a cover crop after the corn. Soybeans, obviously, we're usually trying to do wheat, and then they usually do some kind of mix after the wheat, cover crop wise, on this particular farm. I did not dictate that. Again, to be clear, I let them do what they're gonna do. So here we are then coming up in July, not too long before we're gonna cut wheat. It's dried out now, and you can see a number of roots on the floor of the tile, okay? I should ask, and I should have asked and when we showed first, 4 pictures, how many of you are concerned by what you see? If this was your tile, would you be concerned? Anybody? Hands? Nobody be concerned other than this gentleman here?
Well, I'm concerned when my tile plugs, but I'm not concerned about other pictures.
Okay. So I would say in my observations, if you don't see at least some roots in your tile, you've got a problem. You've got a limiting layer somewhere. You want to see some. Okay. Not a bunch, but you at least would want to see some. If you're not seeing any, there's a problem. There's definitely a problem. So after this, to the gentleman's question, we wanted to try and observe the roots of different cover crop species. We've got wheat stubble, good opportunity to get anything we want planted in there to observe, right? Okay, so right here is where we go in, the tile, right there. So we come down this lane, walk along the edge of the field, go in right there. That is not perpendicular perfectly, but as close as you're probably gonna get. So our district has a 10-foot no-till drill, so we used it to do either 10 or 20-foot strips of the cover crops, and then this 7-way mix out here on the end, that's what they planted the whole rest of the field to. So our last strip was just part of the field. Our capability is to go 320 feet into a tile. We have 320 feet of push cable, I should say, and then we have 320 feet of cord on the crawler. So 320 is our max, and I can tell you with a push one, 320 is plenty enough. Yeah, that gets pretty hard to push by the time you get clear out there. And if there's no water in the tile, sometimes you can't make it to hole 320. So anyways, we planted this at the end of August. Okay, we had really high hopes for this. Here we are a month later, okay, and we're seeing some of those wheat roots starting to tumbleweed. Okay, these would not still be, these are not from the cover crop. These are still from what I believe to be wheat, okay? And they're starting to tumbleweed. And the interesting thing though is too, you notice those roots still look white, which would indicate they're still alive, not dead. You would see them being brown if they were dying. And that's something else we've observed through the years here is that roots, and it makes sense when you think about it, when the crop matures, harvested, the roots do not die as fast as what it looks like the plant is on top. Okay, and I'm not a plant physiologist. I'm an ag econ major. You know, I got through dumb chemistry and dumb biology, and that was the extent of it. I like numbers. That stuff just didn't click with my brain. But anyways, versus like a cover crop, when you chemically terminate it, obviously everything dies. You can see a pretty quick response on that. So here's our plot in December. Really high hopes. Okay, but what you can't see in here is they use RTK auto steer, and the way they harvested it, they windrowed the straw and baled it. We ended up with volunteer wheat in every one of our plots. Significant enough that we could not say moving forward, if we see roots in the tile, what are they from? Are they from the cover crop or are they from wheat? So that was kind of a bust. That was a bummer. And that's part of research. So here we are then in January, and now I would say we've got new roots from something. Again, we could not say whether it was from the cover crop or from the volunteer wheat at that point. And they did burn the field down. I mean, it wasn't like we just planted it after. We tried to let the wheat regrow, burn that down. But it just didn't work out. But as you can see, we still have some of these tumbleweeds. We had not had a high enough flow event to flush those. But something interesting, and you'll see this on the other sites as we move forward, is those are surprisingly still attached in there for quite some time. Because we'll hit them with the tile camera head. I mean, you plow right into them and it blocks the screen for a minute. And when you come back out, they're still there. So they're still surprisingly robust and attached in there, you know, coming up on almost 6 months after we've cut the wheat. So here we are in March. We finally had a flow event. Things have broke loose, flowed, seeing some new roots in here. Again, we can't say what they're from because of the volunteer wheat. Because what I wanted the ability to do is use the locator and go to each plot strip and, you know, be able to track, you know, what cover crop, what its activity was in the tile, but that just did not work out. So then they went to corn, following the 7-way mix, no-till corn into it. Chemically burnt down what species did not winter kill. There were some winter kill species in the mix. But as you can see, June, corn's been in the ground about a month. And then in September, we're seeing quite a few roots from corn. And that has to be from corn. I mean, when you look at June, it has to be. And if you look on this particular slide, I really tried to take it at the same footage in the tile for comparison sake on that. Not always does it work out that way. And I'll tell you, to be honest, to be upfront, this is not exactly the same to the inch spot it is. Because the counter is on the reel. So you're gonna have some flex, you know, in the push rod as you push it in, but it should be within a foot or so. It should be pretty close on that. So here we are post corn harvest, and as you can see, we've got more moisture in this fall than what we did previously. 20 was a pretty dry summer, not as dry as last summer, but pretty dry summer for us down in DeKalb County. But as you can see, we still had some tumbleweeding happening even from corn roots. Okay. So then, fast forwarding to soybeans in July 25th, 2022, I remember that day well. You know why? Because there's 3 dates us guys should always remember, right? What are those? Anniversary, wife's birthday, mom's birthday. This is my mom's birthday, so I remember being there. Aren't I a good son? She might beg to differ some days. But surprising, this one surprised me the most. I was not as surprised to see corn in there. I did not expect to see that prolific of bean roots. I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised to see like a tap root, you know, every so often coming in. But this one did surprise me some. And it's also interesting, and I've not had the ability nor the patience, see how those roots there are coming up out of the bottom of the tile on the slide on the right, or the picture on the right, I should say. I cannot tell you if those are coming around the outside of the tile and coming up, or whether they're hugging. See, like that root there, looks like it comes over and then it might be hugging and then coming up. I can't tell you that. I can't tell that with the camera, and I'll be honest, I do not have the patience to dig those up gingerly enough to not break them before I dug it up. But I would need someone else with better skills than me to do that. But I would be interested to know just how that those roots are coming up from the bottom, sticking up like that. So then post soybean harvest, we still, again, get a little bit of tumbleweeding in there. That's what I call it, a real technical term, tumbleweeding. And then fast forward to corn in 23. This is interesting. This is a video, and it's not exact because, again, the footage counter is not an exact thing because it's on the reel. But you notice we go through periods of we see some roots and then it's pretty clean. And then we see some roots, and then it's pretty clean. Everybody agree they're seeing that? Does anyone know why that is? Yep. yeah, yeah, you could row the corn by the roots in the tile, roughly, okay, it's not RTK accurate, okay, but you could roughly, every 30 inches, see the rows of corn, and remember, we're not exactly perpendicular either. Remember back to the map there, where our tile line's not exactly perpendicular there. So that was pretty interesting, first time I had seen that on any of the sites, is being able to row corn in the tile. So. Then fast forward to soybeans, this year, or this past growing year, I should say, we're almost into the new growing year now, crop year. Really, in 320 feet, this here at 263 was the most significant spot of roots. And I don't know if it's because it was a dry year. I don't know what it is about that particular spot there, of why we seen them there. Most of it looked like this. Very benign, very just boring, honestly. But boring gives you data too, okay? So, when I'm doing this presentation in my county, and some of you may already be, your wheels start turning about, man, that camera would be kind of handy for other things than crop roots, you know, when you're trying to find that elusive tile, where it goes, where is it plugged, whether it's crop roots or tree roots or whatever. So I have to run a pretty hard line in my county. This is not a toy, okay? I'm not coming to just do whatever. I have an open invitation to all my producers. If you think you have a plug because of cover crop roots or crop roots in general, I'll be there. But if I show up and like there's no cover crops or it's like chisel plowed, I'm out of there, okay? So this is why their tile's plugged, because Cousin Eddie comes over at Christmas. Everybody's seen Christmas Vacation, I assume. Don't call me, okay? Call septic guy. Don't call me. All right, on to site B. This is the second of 3 sites that we go to, and again, we try to go on a quarterly basis. This particular producer, corn, soybeans, wheat, once in a great while. I would say, yeah, not as often as a previous site, and he does use some tillage, okay? Mostly vertical tillage, a more aggressive kind of a vertical tillage, not to get into a vertical tillage discussion, but definitely not no-till. And a pet peeve of mine is debating about what no-till is. Because to me, it's pretty simple. Did you ever have to borrow a vehicle from your folks when you were a teenager?
Oh, yeah.
If they told you no, what did that mean?
No.
No, it didn't mean sometimes I could take it when they said no. See, to me, that's the way no-till is. No tillage, no-till, okay? That, I don't know. I know it's debated even amongst conservation folks of what no-till means. To me, it seems very simple. No tillage passes. I don't care what tool it is, any equipment, folks in here that sell equipment. Okay, good, you won't throw stuff at me. Because some of them try to convince you that running some full width tillage implement is still no-till. Okay, no-till is no-till. Okay, sorry, I'll get off my soapbox about that. It's just a pet peeve of mine. So this particular site did have wheat when we started in 21. He called me because he did have a plug from what he thought was cover crops. Okay, and this is also a point I want to make. He called me up. He's good. I've worked with him in the past on a lot of different conservation stuff. Real good producer. Now he's not 100% no-till, but he does do a lot of other conservation activities. Is very, very involved in the community. But anyways, he says, I think I got a plug from cover crops. And so he brought me in when he came in to tell me about it, the tea that was plugged with roots. Brought it in a bucket. Okay. And once we started, I quizzing him of like, you know, when's the last time you did cover crops? Did you just do it the fall before? Well, no, it was 2 years ago. Well, that's probably not what plugged your tile, okay? Is a cover crop from 2 years ago now suddenly plugging your tile. So anyways, here's the wheat in April. A lot of roots in this tile. This is a 5-inch. We go in on a riser on a water and sediment control basin, WSCOB. Everybody familiar with what a WSCOB is? Instead of a grass waterway, we put a series of dams with risers in the field to help with gully erosion. Okay, we're going in on a riser. We did not design this system. He did this on his own. But anyways, that's our access point on this particular site. And you can see the crawler, it even had some roots caught on it. A note, the crawler will go through a 4-inch tile, but it has got to be perfect. It cannot egg shape at all, and it also can't have very sharp bends in it or it'll stall out. So we don't use it on 4 very often. It's a lot better for those big mains like we seen in the beginning. We mostly use the push camera for these. So here we are in June. Absolutely bumper wheat crop coming on in our county for everybody, including this gentleman's field. Okay, absolutely great looking crop. And as you can see, we also have a lot of good looking roots coming on there in the tile. All right. Then that all went out the window. Okay. I don't know, maybe some of you want to forget, this particular site got over 12 inches of rain in the month of July alone. In 1 month, he got over 12 inches there. He keeps very detailed records on this. And I mean, getting wheat harvest done was just an absolute bear that year. It was wet, it went down, test weight was terrible, but we had a lot of flow, right? 12 inches of rain would create a lot of flow. Now, I did say we go in on a riser on the Wascop, we're going upstream. So the water that is drained from the Wascop does not affect what we're looking at. Everybody follow me on that? Because we're going upstream away from the dam. So we're not trying to flow surface water through the part of the tile that we see. It does downstream from us, but not where we go in. But something was really interesting was that ball there. See, that's a Y right there. And it must swirl in there or something to create I mean, that's almost a sphere in there, but it's still attached because we hit it. I plowed right into it. Same way with that. Plow right into it, come back out, still there. So this stuff hangs on for quite some time. And by that, I mean months, surprisingly, especially with 12 inches of rain, because trust me, we had some significant flow events. Because some of those it isn't like it rained every day, okay? We had some 4-inch rain events, for sure. But we wanted to use this as an opportunity to do another plot. And this time, we're going to get smart about this and use technology. So we have an engineering team out of Albion. They would service you guys up here in Elkhart as well for NRCS GPS survey equipment. So I had them come out, and before they baled the straw, we GPS the windrows. Okay, because that's where the volunteer wheat should be heaviest, in the windrows, right? And so we wanted to know that, and then we used our locator to locate the tile, and then he GPS that. And trust me, I have a lot of respect for the 811 guys now, because that locator and I do not get along. It's good that the camera does not record sound, because there would have been not great language, because I don't know how them guys do it. I don't, because it measures distance away, regardless of what plane. Okay, so if it says it's 4 feet, is that 4 foot deep, or is it 4 foot and it's only 2 foot deep? So it's 2 foot away from you and 4 foot or 2 foot down.
We just have someone comment in the chat, sorry for interruption.
No,
ask when you do the pointer, can you kind of point on this, maybe tell a little more where you're pointing to, because
they can't see the
they're
pointer.
not seeing the pointer.
Okay, all right, fair enough. So I will try to do a better job of that. Thank you for that comment. All right, so we've got all this GPSed out. Okay, we pulled out all the stops. So on the bottom right's where we go in the tile. Okay, bottom right, that's where we go in and we go upstream against flow. Okay. Something that is interesting here when we did this, 2 things. One, you could hear the camera as I'm going along with the locator, you could hear it going through the tile. And this is 30 inches deep. You could hear it hitting the tile corrugations as it's going through. The second thing is you can feel it. when you were standing right over the top of it. Not kidding. You probably all think I'm nuts, and if I was sitting over there and you were up here talking, I'd think the same thing. But trust me, I was there. I don't have a way to record that, okay? But you could. You absolutely could. It was unreal. I mean, when you knew where the camera head was, you could feel it vibrating in the soil. It was pretty interesting. So we planted that. Had a lot of rain still yet in the fall. This video here is more about, I like it because seeing your investment at work. This is the first time I ever got to observe tile water or water coming into tile. Okay, the big stream there on the left side of the screen, that's where we had probed it, confirming that I was operating the locator correctly. Okay, we wanted, like, I say it's here, we pull it back about 6 inches and probe down to make sure that that is in fact where the camera was when we were setting up the cover crop plot in September. But as you can see at the start of the video, you could see where the water's like glistening on the edges as it's flowing in there, coming in through the perforations. Very, very cool. Very cool. I just, we've done some tiling ourselves. I just like seeing the investment at work. I don't know. That's really the main point with this. But you're seeing some roots. So we're excited about this. We got this off to a start, good start. We've eliminated that weed problem. I mean, we're going to see volunteer wheat in those windrows, but now with the locator and having everything GPS, we'll know where we're at and we'll know what we're looking at, right? Great plan, didn't come together again. So we had so much rain and it was so wet. Again, doing it where there's a wasp cob probably wasn't the brightest idea because we had enough high flow events. We lost. Out here's what he just planted oats and radish in the rest of the field. This here was our plot. What you're seeing, this green, is volunteer wheat that's coming up. That's all. I mean, and it come up. What volunteer was there in the fall died. This is what's coming up now. So we lost the whole plot because it was too wet. It just plain drowned it out. So that didn't work out so well either. So again, we didn't get to observe the different species in the tile like we wanted to. I have not since tried to do it again. I have some ideas of how I'd want to do it in the future, but the right opportunity hasn't presented itself. The other thing I do want to point out, just for disclosure, he VT'd this field on the left. The whole thing, including where our plot was before seeding the cover crop. Again, I don't dictate on these sites what the producers do, other than access to the tile. That's about it. I let them do what they're going to do rotation and cover crop wise. And as you can see on the right, tile's pretty clean. We didn't have anything that really survived the winter. Everything's coming on now. So here's the corn following up in 22. Seeing quite a few roots in July, October, or we're coming into corn harvest, probably a month away roughly or so. There on the right, and the roots are already dying off. Corn does seem to die off quicker than wheat does in the tile from our observations. And you can see it clumping a little bit there on the right. And then soybeans following up the following growing season in 23. Really interesting. Hopefully those you remotely can see in the tile in the bottom where the roots literally like sticking way up out of the bottom. I can't explain that either. I don't know, again, where those are coming from the outside and coming up underneath or coming inside. But again, we're seeing some soybean roots coming in there. And then corn this past growing season, pretty clean coming into June there. I wouldn't say it had been in the ground a month yet, but pretty close at that point because this particular field, he usually gets planted pretty quick. There's no cover crop either. Okay, again, he only really does a cover crop after the wheat on this particular field, which isn't all bad because it's good to have some sites where we're doing regular cover cropping and sites where we're not to kind of observe some of those differences. So I'm okay with that. And again, I'm not trying to dictate what he does. But then fast forward to September, again, a lot of corn roots in there, in that tile. Again, remember, this is all at least 30 inches deep. Okay, last site that we go to, Site C, is actually not in my county, but it's still in the Lake Erie Basin. Okay? Because in my county, drainage water management, does everybody know what I mean by drainage water management? You folks, so basically, what we have, where that yellow dot is in the top left of the screen, close to the road there's a water control structure there. And what he does is got boards in it to control the water table in the field, holds the water back, and the whole tile system in this field. This system was installed in 14 as well. We've got what I'll call a sub main along the grass lane at the top of the slide. That's 6 inch, and then those are all 4-inch laterals running north and south in the field there. We go in on number 5. So if you start at the left side of the screen, count 5 runs over, that's where we go in. And I don't know why, but it worked out well for us. He has a riser that comes to the surface at every one of those connections along the grass lane. So very nice to be able to observe what's going on. What's not so nice is I can't really envision how he did it, but however he hooked all that together, that is a bear to get the camera to go the right direction. And another time that it's really good that it does not record sound, because it requires a lot of persuasion to get it to go the correct direction, because it constantly wants to go in that 6-inch sub main along running east and west there along the lane. But we eventually persistence pays off and we get it to go the direction we want. Okay, so this is the first trip there in 21 on this. Okay, this is a time where we were in that 6-inch sub main running east and west along the grass lane. Interesting that that's cool season grass, like you put on a filter strip or waterway. Okay, orchard grass, fescue, timothy. That's all there is in it. And that tile, again, is at least 30 inches deep. I don't know exactly, but I know there is not a tile we look at that's less than 30 inches deep that you would see cool season grass that he keeps mowed along that lane. Now, not lawnmower mowed, okay, but bush hog mowed, pretty regular, that you would see that many roots in that tile from that. Okay. And then we get finally out in the field, okay. How many people think that tile is empty? It's water. It's full. Yeah, he's right, it's full. Okay, how many of you think it's upside down? The image. Everybody see the black at the top of the tile? It's not upside down. It's an air pocket. Now, someone smarter than me can explain why it looks black when the tile's white. Something about the light, something in there with that. But yeah, and I'll prove it to you later. I've got a video where we actually move the camera and you can see it shake the bubble up there. But it's clear full. Now this producer, he is the highest level of conservation adoption of the 3 sites I go to. He is full on 100% no-till, has a diverse crop rotation including corn, beans, wheat, and oats for harvest. Not for cover crop, for harvest. He has cornered a niche market on oats. And then does a cover crop after everything except beans when he's going to oats, because he doesn't want to have to deal with trying to terminate a cover crop that early in the spring when he wants to plant his oats. So that kind of makes sense on that. But another concern that he faces in that county, it's pretty flat where he's at. In DeKalb County, we can't do controlled drainage. We just have too much topography. Well, you could do it, but you would have to contour the pattern tile system on the hills to maintain less than 2%, because otherwise it'll just start bleeding out. Or we just have too much relief. You can't hold water back without it wanting to come out of the ground from the tile. But in this county, that field is, by my standards, it's as flat as the top of this table. Okay, so it works out. And to be honest, I don't know why he pattern drained that field, because it's rare he ever opens the boards. He keeps the water backed up a long time in there. Long time. But again, I don't dictate. He handles it however he wants. Because normally what you would do, you'd hold it back in the winter months, and when it comes time to plant, you know, or ahead of planting, obviously enough, you'd release it so the tile functions, so you can do field operations. But he seems to get by without having to do that. So here we're looking at soybeans planted into cereal rye that's been terminated and we're here in June. This first time I've been to that site. So here we are in September. Anybody think tile's full or empty there? Okay, he's right. It's still full. It's still completely full. Okay. But here, this one really shows better than the other one. We have no sedimentation on the bottom of the tile. That is always a concern, the pushback we get as conservation folks about drainage water management, where it'll fit. Again, I don't have very many sites in DeKalb where we could ever consider it without great additional expense to tile on the contour. But it is, I mean, you can see every corrugation in there. So he does not have any risers though. Okay, so that may be a different story. If you had some place that you could allow sediment from the surface to get into the tile. I don't know on that, so don't take that as a blanket statement, but I'm pretty confident that drainage water management won't fill up with sediment in tile as long as you don't have a riser that's dumping sediment into it, okay? And then here we are, oats for harvest in 22. And this is oats for harvest, not oats for a cover crop. I know maybe up here where you guys have a lot of livestock, maybe you do have more oats for harvest, I don't know. But in my part of the world, that is very, very uncommon, very uncommon. But again, you see a few roots, nothing super exciting. And then we get into, he follows that with a cover crop after the oats are harvested. We see some roots in there. Again, tile is still full. You can see the black at the top of the tile in the image. And again, I promise you, it is not upside down. And then corn, again, the picture on the right is the first time in 23 of me going to that site. That tile is empty at that point. Because it was pretty dry in 23. Not as dry as it was last summer, but dry enough that tile finally emptied out. So it was kind of interesting to see the difference and show a side by side. And you really don't see, you know, just at a quick glance that you wouldn't know that one was empty and one was full. So I think that says a lot about the risk of drainage water management silting up a tile. Okay. Again, with some sideboards on that, depending on what it's draining. Like I don't know, well, you wouldn't want to do that anyways, but like that wascop, you would potentially have more sediment coming into it, but you probably wouldn't want to do drainage water management on that anyways. And then this past growing season, went to soybeans. Again, in the spring, you can see just on the left, one little black, I call them leeches, because that's what it looks like to me. One little black leech at the top of the tile, but then on the right, again, super dry, it was empty. But not a ton. This site, for whatever reason, is very, as you can see as we went through it, very consistent on roots, to me. Regardless of the crop, cover crop, for the most part, you see some, but not a ton. You don't see tumbleweeding. Part of that's probably because they're floating most of the time because he has the water backed up. So, and that's one thing in our observations, I can't say that if it's a wet year, you'll see a lot of roots. If it's a dry year, you'll see a lot of roots. So far, we have no correlation into soil moisture and how many roots you'll see. It's kind of surprising. Okay, this video here, we're on the grass lane again. Okay, we're gonna roll the clock back a little bit to April of 22, but I wanted to sit in the tile and see what those roots would do when he pulled the boards. And we started a big flow, okay? Because I mean, you got all this water backed up, right? So it ought to take right off, and he opened them wide open. And you can see, it starts flowing. And it's, I mean, that's from the risers that he's got along there. It's just some piece of beanstalk there that come through. But I mean, I expected it to get cloudy, something, some of those to break off. I mean, that's cattle water's dirtier than that, where they slob and drop stuff in it. I was very surprised by this, that we wouldn't see more flowing. Now, granted, they're attached to live plants too. Okay, let's just be clear about that. But I still would have expected to see even some from those laterals from other crops that have died flowing through there. But we just didn't see it. It's very encouraging too, it didn't get cloudy. Again, a sign of not, if any, sediment in that tile, from holding that water back that long. I mean, the way that's flowing, we should have turned some stuff up, in my opinion on that. Okay, I also have some folks, that kind of debate, I guess, with me about whether they would ever have a plug or not. And I hope by now you realize kind of some key points. One, crop roots, if you do have a plug from crop roots, it's not like a tree. Okay, does everybody agree with me on that? It's not growing in and filling it up at the point of entry. Because apparently, 100 years ago, when all that clay tile was installed, there was a state law to plant a mulberry tree on top of the clay tile somewhere. Because how many of you have had to work on tile where there's been trees grown into it, clay especially? And you didn't raise your hand, you must not have tile, you put a lot in the offering plate on Sunday. Because I swear every clay tile had to be worked on because of a mulberry tree or something somewhere, okay? But that is not what crop roots do. They do not grow in and fill it up. And our observations over these past almost 5 years going on now, we don't see that like you do with tree roots. We just don't see it filling up there. But what we do have is thousands and thousands and thousands of feet of roots, small amounts of roots that flush at different times, looking for some place to start catching, okay? Kind of like cholesterol in your arteries. It's just looking for places to catch. I'm a poster child for that. I like meat, potatoes, and ketchup, pretty well in that probably order. I have a funny story about ketchup too. I'll tell you at the end. But back to the slide on the left, the picture on the left, you never know where there's something in your tile. All that is, in my opinion, that's just a little stone on top of the tile and it's eventually poked its way down through. And any tile contractors in here? Okay, I don't take anything I'm about to say here moving forward on potential issues where tile could start plugging. They all do a good job, in my opinion. Because we have looked at tile that's been backhoed in, wheel machined in, and plowed in with a plow. And I can't say that any one looks that much better than another from what we've seen, okay? But in thousands and thousands of feet, just like anything else, there's gonna be a few places where it's not perfect. And that's the other thing too, regardless of how it was put in, not to freak anybody out, but your tile don't look all pretty like it did on the roll. There's gonna be places where it does this on the bottom, again, regardless of what equipment it was put in with. But don't freak out, don't get out your cell phone when we break here and go call your tile contractor and start chewing them out. Saying this government guy just told me that you do a bad job. That is not the case, okay? And the other thing is, you're gonna have little stones and stuff that potentially start poking through. You got where, you put a T together and over time, freeze-thaw, driving over it, whatever, it starts to work its way in a little further than it maybe should be. That's a point for it to start catching, okay? And you never know, the right picture, everybody see the 3/8 flat washer in the top of the tile? Where'd that come from? This tile was put in 2012. We're there 10 years later in 2022, and we've looked at this particular site since the beginning of 21, and we never seen that washer till then. So where's it been the whole time? So there's all kinds of goofy things that could be going on in your tile system through nobody's fault, that when you start having a flushing event with the right amount of roots, it can start catching and not flush all of a sudden. Make sense, everybody? Follow me the difference between trees versus crop roots? Okay? The other thing that I would like to point out, wrapping up, is most likely if you have a tile plug from crop roots, it's probably not what's growing there at the time that it's plugged. Most likely. In my observations so far, again, research-wise, we're pretty young yet in this. But it's probably from something prior to that, okay? So I think it gets blamed because you think it's cause and effect, like a tree. You dig it up, it's plugged there, you got a tree above it, pretty easy to figure out what's going on. Not so easy in crop roots because they don't always break off and flush at the same time. They hang on longer, some more than others, depends on the year. I mean, I cannot tell you like, okay, we're seeing these tumbleweeds now like we did. Can't tell you when those are gonna flush. Okay, depends on the event, depends on how long they've had to decay. Like I said, we run into them with a camera head. They'll still be there, those clumps. It's really hard to predict, okay? But I think everybody has roots flowing through their tile, they just don't know it. Okay, and it's in small enough volumes coming out in a ditch, you know, they're not piling up in an open ditch where it's draining out. You know, it's just all flowing and no, you know, ignorance is bliss. Nobody's the wiser. I do thank the producers when I do this in my county. They're really committed, especially this individual. We needed to get access. Beautiful corn, as you can see in the picture. Absolutely awesome corn. And I didn't even want to walk out through it for fear of knocking some of it down. And he said, oh, no, don't walk out through there. I'll mow you a path out there. And I said, no, we're not doing that. We'll just come back later after harvest. It's not that, you know, nope. He fires up his lawnmower and just starts boring out through the field to get us a path out there. So I really appreciate that from that kind of commitment from the producers to work with me on that. Any questions, comments? Yes, sir.
Okay, give me your thoughts. We've all seen taller corn or alfalfa or whatever, a crop just thrive over the tile line,
Mm-hmm.
especially in wet weather.
Mhm.
So how much of that response is from maybe better soil conditions or the water taken away that the crop responded? Or how much of it, or is any of it related to the roots just simply being in nutrient-rich water?
I can't answer that. So that's a good question. So the first thing we would have to know is how nutrient rich is the water? So like, is it just water that's pretty diluted or is it a tile system that's, you know, the elephant in the room connected to a septic system somewhere? We don't know that. I don't know that on any of my sites. I do not know how, you know, the cause and effect on that. Can't answer that. I can't answer that. That's a great question, an awesome question. And I don't know if, you know, it's because it has access to water when it needs it because it's around and on the tile, or has access to air when it needs it because it's around and on the tile. Great question.
Or I could add to that,
Okay.
if there's a spring, there could be a greater warmth in that.
Sure. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, there could be. Yeah, you need to talk to somebody smarter about plants than me. I will be very upfront about that. That's a great question, though. Absolutely. I am just not equipped to answer it. I'm not equipped to answer it. Any other questions, comments? Hopefully, maybe I can answer. That was a good one. Yes.
I didn't see any pictures. Have you run the camera through any clay tile,
I have not. I have not had the opportunity to do that. My suspicion, based on working on a lot of clay tile myself, we would see a lot less. Just because we don't have as many points to be able to enter, you know. We just don't have all those perforations in every section. That's my suspicion. I had one individual contact me who thought he had, it was in wheat stubble, thought he had a tile plug from roots. He had seen my presentation. This is in my county. We went out there. He had it dug up and we went in about 20 feet and we found it, the clay tile crushed. That was all was wrong with it. But in that 20 feet, from what I remember, I would have to go back and look, and I don't know if I still have that saved. I don't remember seeing as many as we did in the other weak scenarios that we've observed here. Yeah, but that's something I would like to look at a little bit more as clay tile to see how much. But I will say, I don't know if any of you would agree with this. I have had no crop root plugs reported on anything but plastic perforated tile in my county. Nobody's reported a crop root problem on clay tile so far in my county. So, plenty of tree root problems, but not a crop root problem. So, other questions? Good question. Yeah, good question.
When you were talking about the guy that brought in, I think it was a T that had plugged.
Mhm.
So what did you guys finally figure out? Was there some sort of cause? Was there something that was catching?
When they put the T together, they got it stubbed in there a little too far. It stuck in probably an inch or so further than it should have.
Okay,
And that
was the cause.
that was why it started catching.
Mhm.
Yeah, but he, and I did too, up until we started this, because that was before we had the camera.
Okay,
And then I requested the state office camera at that point to get started on this whole deal, along with an ARS site. So is everybody familiar with the Agricultural Research Service? Out of West Lafayette, they have an office, a lab, actually, National Soil Erosion Lab out of West Lafayette, run by the Agricultural Research Service. They're another agency of USDA. They have been in my county for 20 years, doing different water quality studies, edge of field monitoring, all kinds of different projects. And between that plug on that T and right at the same time, they have a lot of instrumentation on outlets and ditches to collect samples, collect temperature. I don't know what all they collect, but they noticed that same particular year, some roots that didn't plug, but catching on their instrumentation. So that's how we kind of got started on that. But yes, that was just plain, it was just put together just a little too far. And it maybe wasn't when they put it together. But again, through time and things moving a little bit, I mean, if you're able to hear and feel the tile moving with just a camera head that's smaller than 4 inches in diameter, tile's probably moving a little more subsurfacely than we give it credit for. I'm guessing, okay? Again, that's not something I've done. Something I would like to do sometime is like a fully loaded grain cart, drive across right where I'm sitting in a tile. And maybe we don't want to know that. There's some things that, don't ask a question if you don't want the answer, kind of thing on that. So, other questions?
Have you ever done any work with a sock on the tile?
No, like where you would on sand or muck. No, we have not. No, the big is repeatable access. That's the challenge we have in a site, is being able to get to it. Not everyone's willing to mow down their corn, nor do I think I would, mow down my corn to get access. That's the challenge we have with a lot of sites. No, I have not. I definitely would be glad to do it. And some of that isn't all bad, because in all honesty, I would love to do this full time, but my job description has other priorities in it. So, but that would be something at least one time I would like to look at. I would like to look at muck, especially in a very sandy soil. We do anything that's sandy, DeKalb County's a gravel pit. Because otherwise we are clay, heavy clay, especially when you get on the east side of my county and you're getting close to Ohio, where there's lake beds that are real heavy clay. So, yeah, anything that's got a significant amount of sand, most likely got a gravel pit in DeKalb County. Yes, sir.
These tiles you checked had the open inlet or the riser. Do you think that allowed extra air into that length of tile from there to the ditch? And if it would have been completely closed, you would see fewer roots because of less oxygen?
Based on what we see on outlets in a ditch versus the laterals we go to in the field, I think it's the reverse. I think more air makes less roots. So I think air tends to shear roots. when they come into tile versus where it's closed off. Because again, our access points on 4 and 5 inch, I mean, that's a lot smaller than a big 10 pointed out in a ditch. So that would have a lot more effect and more air. But again, that is just strictly a guess. I don't know, again, mains are big. I've not had the opportunity to look at a 4-inch that dumps direct into a ditch. That's uncommon in my county, that you would have a 4-inch that would actually outlet open into a ditch. 4 inches and 5 inches almost always gonna be tied into a system somewhere and eventually get to a main that goes to the ditch. So, good question though, but yeah, in my observations, I think it's the reverse. More air would create less roots, for sure. Yep, for sure.
So we should put a fan on our tile?
Well, I do want to, again, reiterate, do not freak out by what you're seeing in the tile. It's been going on, my suspicion, for years, and you just didn't know it. You just didn't know it. Ignorance was bliss on that. So I would not panic about what you're seeing. I honestly, I would panic more if you've seen 0 in a 4-inch. That would mean you've got a significant compaction layer, a pH layer, something that's restricting root development deeper. So, and also keep in mind, I mean, you've all seen where corn plants have been dug up, Purdue's done it. The amount of roots we're seeing in the tile is a small percentage of what actually is there for the plant too. So it's not like the whole corn roots are all down in the tile, so.
We have a question on the chat here. I ran across a producer with tile plugs with roots a long way from the woods. We tried DNA testing, but old roots were too old to extract DNA. Conventional till, mainly corn and soybean, not sure about wheat. Any guesses on what roots may have been?
Great question. So the DNA thing, we tried that once. And that, the best they could do was tell us whether it was a grass or broadleaf. Well, that'll narrow it down when you're trying to compare, you know, a cereal rye cover crop versus corn. They're both grasses. And no disrespect to the folks that do the DNA testing. We run into the same thing, couple things. They said, one, even if the tile water looks clean, there's so much staining and stuff that goes on in the roots, even if they look good and they don't look that decayed, it really throws it off. What they did tell us on the DNA testing was the best they could probably do is if you took vegetation from above ground and roots from below ground, they could tell you whether they came from what's above. That's what, but it was expensive at that time to do that. That was 2020 when we did that. So we have not sent another sample in without real confidence about the parameters. But to the second part of the comment / question, if we're not sure about wheat, that's one thing we want to know. Okay, we need to know the whole crop history. And secondly, my best guess is that it could have come from any of the crops. Okay, it could have come from the corn, could have come from the soybeans. Based on what we've seen, and I think you've seen today, that it could have come from any of the crops. It's just a matter of when they flushed at the right event with the right spot in the tile. Okay? And I will say, we can find plugs with the camera, but it's hard to tell the story not observing it up front. Okay, so like, yeah, we can see roots in the tile, but as we're coming to the plug, but again, are those from what's there now, what was there previously, versus when you try to observe it over time like we do? It makes it tough. I'm reminded of, everybody remember Chris Hurt, used to be at Purdue, done marketing stuff for years and years, super smart guy. I took his classes when I was at Purdue quite some years ago now, I hate to admit. But anyways, he said, I'm really good at telling you why what happened, but trying to predict what's going to happen in the future with the markets. If you're taking this class for that, you might as well bow out now, because, you know, we trying to predict the future. And that's kind of way with that. When we don't have the history, it's a little different than the marketing, but when we don't have the history where we've observed over time, it makes it a challenge. So long story short, I think it could be from any of those roots. Any of the crops that could have been grown there, but we would need a very extensive, history of what was grown there over time leading up to that. So hopefully that answers their question. If they have a follow-up, I'm more than happy to oblige.
Thanks, John, for your question.
Other questions? Concerns?
So as a positive, roots, you need roots,
Yep,
because it creates value for that tile as well, because as much as you're creating floor space
yes,
for the rain to infiltrate in, it
Correct.
also creates the avenue for a water.
right. That's a great point, Jim, because,
And so I looked at a field, and I'll use ours as an example, many of you guys have been on it in field days and stuff, it probably needed to be pattern tiled 20 years ago. Now I don't.
sure, yep,
Because of the management style, like we created that pore space across,
right,
the tile's probably running as full as it's ever run. I just happened to, up in the barn, great grandpa wrote a map on the tile. I fixed it this summer, it was super dry. We had a tree roots at 40 feet off the ditch. We pulled 100-foot section out, clear full of tree roots.
sure,
So I solid tile that all the way in. When I got back, it was a 3-inch old clay, but it was just trickling.
mhm,
Normally I just leave it, I teed into it. The tile's been fairly consistent, until about, I'd say a month ago. And that's a 6-inch, it's running almost full. I think that 3-inch opened up.
sure.
Look, that was put in 1908, there's a date written on the siding of the barn.
That's great you have that.
So it's kind of neat to see where he drew off the ditch, where that thing worked, but, I think everybody gets super concerned about roots in the tile, and we don't want to have root. No, it's a huge benefit to
Yeah.
making sure, because it cleans that tile out, just like ours. If I didn't have roots, we have so much iron in the water, it'd probably glaze up, it'd crust over. If I can keep roots coming and going in there,
Definitely,
those boards up.
yeah, building a bigger bucket too,
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
hold
no,
more water
a
in
lot.
these dry periods, yeah,
We went from a
absolutely,
5-gallon bucket to a
yeah,
kiddie swimming pool.
exactly, yes. Yeah, and the excuse of, well, I don't wanna grow cover crops, cause, you know, I don't want to plug my tile, we're gonna quit growing corn too. I mean, I showed a number of pictures today of tumbleweeds created by corn and beans both. And I think those tumbleweeds are the bigger concern once a tumbleweed, that's our biggest risk in my opinion. I don't have any proof of this, but that's my opinion of our biggest risk to a plug. Cause now you've got a bigger piece that could catch on that 3/8 flat washer versus one strand of root flowing through there. It'd probably just break it off if it tried to catch versus, you know, a glob of it. No, that's a good point. Yeah, again,
It's like Beck's, example with the root in those tubs they brought up. That was almost 6 feet
sure,
of corn roots.
yeah, yep,
Not rye,
Yeah.
not wheat. not-
correct, correct,
But
yeah.
corn. And you want that,
right.
because as dry as it is, we want that root to get down
Yeah.
there and be resilient.
Can you flip the presentation back up real quick, Mark?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Let me, share, let me do,
I
I'm
mean, the
sorry.
third, just go to the third slide. That's all you got.
Let me, share so the, people that's, virtual get to see that too. Let me close that, sorry.
It's the one with the 4 pictures with no writing on it. That's the point I want to drive home. To me, none of those pictures are any more of a problem plus or benefit, depending on what boat you're in and what mindset you're in.
Which slide was that,
Third,
sorry?
third should be, I think, the third one.
Third one.
Yeah, yep, number 3. See, when you look at that, to me, none of those are any more of a concern or positive in Jim's case. I'm more in Jim's boat. If I'm not seeing roots, I would be concerned. None of those are any more of a concern to me about the tile plugging than compared to any of the others in there. So that is the main takeaway, is that the risk is there with anything. It's just if we have the right conditions.
Well, it's like you said earlier, when you don't see roots, that's when you be more
Right.
concerned.
And to Jim's point on that, I mean, then you're using less and less of that high dollar. I mean, land's expensive in my part of the world. I know it's even more expensive up here. So you're using even less of that high dollar land that you paid for. You know, or are paying for it. For a long, long time, yeah.
Are you gonna continue to go back to those 3 sites?
Yeah. Yep, we still. I did not make my January run like I wanted to. This other parts of my job have required more of my time this year than I anticipated, and I don't have a good excuse. I just plain didn't make it.
But it wasn't
we-
very nice in January this year either.
Well, that's, you can find days any month. No, you're right, but you can find days. That's, again, I don't have a good excuse. I just didn't block out the time like I should have. But yes, we intend to continue until, I don't think we'll ever have all the answers, but I intend to continue for the foreseeable future. Absolutely. To continue observing, because we always see something different. I mean, like 3/8 flat washer, that kind of thing. I mean, those kind of things keep you interested. Like, what are we gonna see next? Raccoons, live raccoons.
You had an animal guard on that, right?
Yes, correct. That
I
one.
don't
had
think
an
you
animal
said
guard.
that today, but you
Yep.
said it the other day.
Yes, it had an animal guard on. Yep. You seen the glob stuff in the beginning of that video. I wasn't sure what that was. Then I knew what it was when I seen the raccoon in there. It's, you know, his outhouse. And I had to clean that crawler off in the office when I got back. And we have multiple tenants in our building, and there's an insurance company that's down the hall from us, and the guy come in there and he goes, "What is that all over that?" And I said, you don't wanna know. Because one don't smell very good, and I go, "Well, that's why you don't wanna know. That's why you don't wanna know." Any other questions? I'll tell you my catch-up story then, to finish up. Okay, so I do a number of soil health presentations throughout the year. Started doing it probably 10 years ago. One year we were asked, because there used to be our soil scientist for our area and I done a lot of them together. We went to Red Gold to one of their grower kickoff meetings, because they have a lot of contract growers. I don't understand how that all works, but anyways, we were asked to come to one of their grower kickoff meetings. And I love ketchup, okay? So this is great. I'm going to Red Gold, man. This is gonna be awesome. So we go there and we do our presentation, and they're gonna serve lunch. And, we stuck around for lunch, and they sold pulled pork. Some of you may find this a travesty, but I don't like barbecue sauce on my pulled pork. I like ketchup on my pulled pork, okay? Not a big fan of barbecue sauce. Ketchup is all the condiments I need in life, okay? So I put my ketchup on there, and we're sitting there eating, and I'm like, man, I don't know what they did to this pork, but it is hot, like spicy hot, okay? And I'm like, what is the deal? So I go up, and I'll fix this problem. I go up and I get more ketchup, and I mean, it's like swimming in it. And I'm eating along, and I'm like, man, my lips are like on fire. I swear they were peeling. So on the way home, I asked Scott, the guy with me, I said, "Was your pork hot?" He goes, "No." I go, "Man, mine was." I go, "I went up and got more ketchup, tried to kill it, and it just got worse." He goes, "You dummy, it was jalapeno ketchup." So I told my wife, no more Red Gold ketchup. If they're gonna, manipulate good, honest ketchup with jalapenos, I just don't have any use for that. No offense to Red Gold. No offense to Red Gold. If any of you grow for Red Gold, maybe, so. Any other questions? Tile camera, soil health stuff, anything? Yes, sir.
So I had a number of tile plugs. It was after a wheat crop, and then I planted like 18 weight cover crop.
Mhm.
And of the tiles in this field that plugged, they all had up supposedly to a sump pump at residences.
Okay.
So I suppose when you got any other possible nutrients in, everything is off the table, right?
That, I have not been able to observe, where you would have a significant additional source of nutrients in the tile. But my suspicion would be is that, when did it plug? What time of year?
Well, I noticed in the spring when I wanted to plant, when I drove the
Sure,
planter into the field to no-till.
that's
plant.
pretty common. That's pretty common.
And all three of the tile plugged maybe 30 feet from the outlet. So not from the beginning, you thought there would have been enough flow at the outlet to,
Mhm.
now the one was armpit deep and it plugged by a T, but there was no catch. It was a factory.
Right. Right. But the problem is like when we dig that stuff out, I mean, if you're like me, I like to dig with a backhoe more than a shovel, so sometimes you kind of get into it. But my suspicion is there was something at that connection, and my suspicion is it's probably from the wheat crop prior, from my observations, not from your cover crop growing. Again, keep in mind, it's not growing in and filling up at that point, because there is, like, say, for example, that nutrient-rich water, there's a belly right there by that T. Say those roots are wanting to go to that. My suspicion is that's not why it plugged there. It's because there was some issue with that connection there, or just plain the fact that the water had to change directions and it slowed up enough for it to start building up, roots there that were flushing probably from the wheat crop before. Yeah, I think a lot of cover crops after wheat have been blamed for root plugs when it in reality was probably from the wheat. And don't take that to mean stop growing wheat. Wheat is awesome for soil health. I mean, it's a different crop in the rotation. As the gentleman explained, you can do an 18-way mix, anything after wheat, okay? That's not the point here. Because as we've seen, you can get a lot of roots from corn and soybeans too. So, but, my suspicion is it's probably from the wheat, but not having seen it.
Well,
I
I
don't
got
know.
wheat in it for harvest this spring in that field.
Yep,
Then those problem areas where the tile was. Those are covered top and bottom and all around with plastic now, so we'll see if.
sure, yep. But again, if it starts flowing from someplace, they start catching at that point, yeah. Again, just keep in mind, it's not a point of entry plug. I've never seen anything that would ever indicate that in any observations we've had, that it would be a point of entry plug. It's always a flow and catching type situation, just looking for a spot. And again, remember, I've seen a lot of more more than what some producers can take, because some of the folks I go to, they're like, I kind of wish I didn't know that now, kind of thing. But everybody has it, And the other thing I wanted to point out too, where we had the grass lane, any of you that have buffer strips with tile outlets, again, don't panic, because that's an outlet. We just don't see roots in outlets. So what we're seeing in that grass lane there, that's not an actual outlet to an open ditch. You're not gonna see that in a filter strip or something like that, that's along an open ditch where it opens out. So again, don't use that as an excuse not to do buffers along ditches. Yeah. Other comments, questions? You guys had some good ones. Again, about tile, camera stuff, soil health stuff in general. Anything else on the virtual?
No, I don't see any other comments. Well, let's double
Okay.
check here on the chat. No.
Appreciate
So-
your time and attention.
Well, we really appreciate Derek being here and presenting. For those of you that are virtual, I hope that this worked out good. We're kind of a little rookies doing a hybrid presentation here. So give us any feedback. You can, if you're SWCD folks, you want to email Jim or Todd, that'd be great. Or if extension folks email, I know a few people I think said they were going to maybe invite some people in to watch as well. So any feedback we have, one thing I goofed up is I did not extend my screen. So I couldn't really function on my screen here in front of me separately from what everybody here in the room's doing. But I am sharing with the virtual folks of the couple upcoming flyers for our April and May dates and our topics. So we're going to try to run those hybrid as well. And some of these, we're going to try to do something every month, but some months we'll probably go out on a field trip or something. But when we can, we'll try to do some hybrid things And hope that folks can join us and we'll send that out. And I don't know what kind of ketchup we have, but hopefully we got ketchup. So we got subs for those of you that are here. And I will stop recording here and we will cease with our virtual option. Again, thanks everybody for joining us.